Ever since I found out Harriet Tubman is not a real person, it fucked me up. I'm not gonna lie.
So apparently we reached the part of digital delusion where people are out here saying that Harriet Tubman wasn't real. And honestly, I should have known we were headed here, right? Because the moment you start telling the real truth about Black resistance, somebody always tries to rewrite the ending, but this time they picked the wrong one.
Hello guys, welcome once again to AfriPost. I hope wherever you are, you're having a great time. Now I was scrolling through the internet, especially TikTok, and I came across some discussions that really puzzled me. There are people who are still questioning whether Harriet Tubman was a real person. You know, sometimes whites tend to really take things personal. They try to think that they own the world. They try to think that they're the people who created everything. When there is a black person, especially a woman, who is being attributed to something that is quite serious, they are not able to really appreciate it. Most whites, sometimes when you tell them that blacks achieved a certain fate, they are not always ready to really accept it. And that is why they are now questioning the existence of Harriet Tubman. It is quite a sad situation, but I want you to listen to some of these discussions that have been going on over this issue. Then we shall talk in the end. Let's watch.
So I went down one of the more depressing rabbit holes I've seen lately, and that's the whole Harriet Tubman isn't real thing, which is very disappointing, guys. I got to admit. Remember, just because you didn't know something that was freely available information and has been for decades, doesn't imply that there's a conspiracy theory to keep it from you or to change the story and turn her into something she wasn't. So a lot of misinformation there. I also see some well-intended misinformation going back the other direction, attempting to combat it. But she was way cooler than people know, actually. She was incredibly competent. She's one of those people that if you put her in front of any given task, not only is she going to figure that out, she's going to master it. Everyone who knew her said the same thing about her. She was incredibly competent. Even her enemies, her enslaver, knew that she was so competent that he allowed her to choose her own assignments and work largely unsupervised, paying him a yearly fee. That's how competent she was. And she spent that time getting to know liberation-minded enslaved people and freedmen. She also didn't create the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad itself has existed in some iteration literally since slavery was introduced to the colonies. She was just a very effective conductor. She did have a different name. It was Amarynta Ross. She changed it to Harriet Tubman when she married John Tubman. I see a lot of people saying that she changed it after she escaped to avoid capture. That isn't accurate. She actually changed it before she escaped. There are competing narratives as to why she actually changed it. The leading to her is that it was a religious conversion, as her enslaver was Jewish. The other is that she just did it as an ode to her mother and obviously taking John Tubman's last name. So that might confuse people as to why she wasn't caught. You got to remember how famous Harriet Tubman was before the Civil War too. The Underground Railroad itself was famous. People didn't know the actual locations, which is why it worked, but everybody knew about the Underground Railroad. The South used it as criticism all the time towards the North, was their material support of the Underground Railroad. So it wasn't like a secret that this was going on. And once she made her way to Philadelphia, she went there because it was a hotbed of abolitionist activity, and she knew she could create allies. She even resented it after a certain point and felt very tokenized by YT allies, which she was, because the abolitionists were looking for symbols, and she was fucking incredible. So I think you can see it in this picture right here. I mean, look at her. She don't want to be there. She just knows that she had to do this kind of shit to continue getting material support for the Underground Railroad, to get more and more people out. But she had very famous allies, guys. The land that she was given in Auburn, New York, was given to her by William Seward, who would later become Secretary of State under Abraham Lincoln. That's how powerful her allies were. So it wasn't really possible to just walk into Philadelphia and nab somebody as famous as Harriet Tubman. The South absolutely reviled this woman. Lastly, I never thought that I would have to say this, but the Underground Railroad is not a collection of subterranean tunnels. It was just a collection of safe houses that people used to navigate their way towards freedom. Those safe houses were constantly changing, as were the routes. There was no railroad. It was not physically underground. I've seen some people go so far as to say that she was trafficking people through these tunnels, which is really insidious and absolutely false. She was technically a spy for the Union. I think scout is really a better descriptor, but in any case, you guys are thinking she worked for the U.S. government as it exists today, which wasn't the case. The Union was fighting the slave state, so it behooved anyone working towards emancipation to work with the Union Army, which she did. She was very strategically minded, guys. She planned the raid that got 700 people out in 1863. She helped plan Harper's Ferry before the Civil War. There's a reason John Brown referred to her as the General. Okay, and the Union did think that this might be a good way to enlist some free black slaves, which it did. That doesn't mean they were being trafficked. They willfully signed up for military service, which is completely understandable. If it were me, be like, fuck yeah, let me get that get back finally. She wasn't trafficking anyone. She never pressured any of them into doing any of it. And I understand how people can get fucked up because there are so many figures in American history that were taught to worship or think kindly upon and just are complete pieces of shit. So I get it. Harriet Tubman is not one of those people. She's actually underappreciated for what a fucking badass she really was. Okay, so just read a couple books for the love of God, y'all. It's killing me.
Ever since I found out Harriet Tubman is not a real person, it fucked me up. Not gonna lie. Because her real name is Araminta Ross.
Yes.
And she was a spy
Yes.
for the United
First, it was Emmett Till was a female SA victim, and now Harriet Tubman isn't real. We're losing the plot. We're losing the plot. Real quick, if you were a slave and became a free slave, and you're going around taking other slaves to free them from plantations, would you use your real name? Harriet Tubman led one of the biggest crusades to free enslaved people. And we're acting like she doesn't exist. There's whole pictures of her. She may not have had any children, but she has relatives there. She has relatives that have written books about her. This is why they should have never let a bunch of y'all skip that grade during COVID.
So apparently we reached the part of digital delusion where people are out here saying that Harriet Tubman wasn't real. And honestly, I should have known we were headed here, right? Because the moment you start telling the real truth about Black resistance, somebody always tries to rewrite the ending, but this time they picked the wrong one, all right? Let me make this real simple. Harriet Tubman was a real person. I think the problem is that a lot of them just can't fathom the idea that a disabled Black woman who couldn't read, lived with seizures, and was born into bondage still outsmarted the system multiple times over. So instead of sitting with that, y'all default to, oh, well, she must be a myth. Because God forbid someone exists outside the mold that you've been spoon-fed. So let's run this back. She was born Araminta Ross in Maryland. Yeah, she was enslaved. She took a blow to the skull from her overseer that nearly killed her. And when she escaped in her 20s, she could have stayed gone. But she didn't. She went back again and again and walked more than 70 people to freedom. And no, she didn't float on vibes. She knew the signs, the land, the networks. She carried a gun. She told people, you'll be free or you'll be dead. Pick one. But wait, there's more. She worked with John Brown. She served as a Union spy and led the Coombe River Raid in 1863, freeing over 700 people in a single night. But sure, she's a myth, because clearly a black woman doing the impossible must mean it didn't happen, right? Y'all will believe in talking snakes, cherry trees, and founding fathers who somehow love liberty while owning people. But you draw the line at Harriet Tubman. Make it make sense. So here's the real issue. Harriet didn't just escape. She turned around and made herself the nightmare of the slave-holding South. She was strategic, ruthless, and brilliant. But apparently y'all aren't ready for that version. So no, I'm not going to debate her existence. But what I will do is say this. If Harriet Tubman feels too real to be real, that says more about your imagination than it ever will about her. She lived, she freed, she wrecked the entire system with her own bare hands. And that's what you're trying to erase.
Yup, it's a weird phenomenon that will have to be studied, but we've seen it before, especially in Nazi Germany, which is what I always say to people who think that this was going to spark some kind of revolution, is history actually shows us that the longer a population lives under authoritarian rule, the more authoritarian they become themselves, and that includes things like conspiracy theories. That shit leaks over. And I think it's the culmination of a few different factors, like American exceptionalism and hyper-individualism. We like to be contrarian. People outside of the country will tell you that about us, that we like to just pick random fucking arguments about weird things. Because we like to think that we hold some kind of secret knowledge that nobody else has. Only we have that gnosis. But I also think in 2025, people have decided that escapism can be their full-time reality. If you don't like reality, just create your own. Create your own set of facts and then say that it's just as viable as established objective fact. Well, it's just your opinion. No, it's not. This is just objective fact. Plus, I think there are some people who are starting to deconstruct, and that is a tricky period of time. I remember, I started pretty much in high school, but really in earnest after high school. And I got into this weird little conspiracy bout for about a year after I read The New Pearl Harbor, which is bullshit. But, I was 18. Of course, I was a fucking idiot until I recognized people are nowhere near this competent to pull any of this off. That's always what I tell conspiracy theorists is you have way too much confidence in human beings, especially our leadership. They would not be able to pull anything like that off, let alone suppressing true history for over a century. I mean, the number of people it would take to uphold that, it just isn't possible. So people just kind of hit that surface, and then it's like, what else are they lying about? So I get it. But then you realize, they're not competent enough to lie about everything like I thought they were. No, it's actually pretty easy to see through their propaganda. Once you just read, some real history, which people, for whatever reason, constantly refuse to do. They think that the academic community is also in on it. And these thousands of books have all been written in concert to suppress the true history. It's really fucking insidious.
I fear that it's too late. I'm afraid the CIA has won. I woke up this morning to Bob the drag queen informing me, a history buff, that black people now think that Harriet Tubman was a fake person. They think that she was like a industry plant. Because surprise, surprise, Harriet Tubman is not her real name. Yeah. And they also found out that she was a spy for the United States government. This is scary because literacy is in the gutter. I'm not sure if you noticed, but slaves did get to pick their own names, right? The white man would choose their name. So if you were a free person, first thing you would do is rename yourself. Also, as a slave back then, if you got off that plantation, you're technically a fugitive. So you need to change your fucking name. Okay? She changed her fucking name. A lot of black people. Not even like a lot of black people today, you change your name. A lot of entertainers, guess what? 2 Chainz, his mama ain't naming 2 Chainz. Snoop Dogg's real name is not Snoop Dogg. A lot of people change their names. That's what they go by. It's so fucking weird. Was she a spy? Yeah, she was a spy for the Union. Lots of people were spies for the Union. Lots of lots of freed black people, a lot of former slaves. They were spies. Wouldn't you want to spy against a corrupt government that was keeping you enslaved? Like, what the fuck is wrong with y'all? When did y'all stop thinking? Seriously, when did y'all stop? This is scary. I've been in Oakland for like 2 days, and everywhere I go, there's black power this, black power that, and it's obvious that this city has been paying for the hard work of those revolutionaries for a long time. And then here comes your dumb ass on Beyonce's internet, not being able to understand simple black history. You ought to be a fucking ashamed of yourself.
I've been on the internet for like forever, forever. And I think one of the silliest things you can do via the internet is to take someone and to reduce them down to minuscule moments and to judge them for the rest of eternity. Like, the way that people create ops on here and just the internet in general, like, it's so ridiculous to me, because a lot of the people who, and I've met a lot of the people who are in the hot seat on here every other goddamn day, like, and I know I'm one of those people too, but like, it's like, they're really just like normal, down to earth, cool people who often do real important work in real life, helping communities of people, swaths of people. But, you know, people will get online and try and make villains out of us, frankly. And often people who don't do shit. And it's just like so sad that so many people on the internet have very little like brain power to think on their own, and they just like follow that wave, seeing people who just are like good people, like genuinely good people, and who aren't even trying to be good people. They just are passionate about the work that they do, myself included, bitch, because I love what I do. I shows up for my community. It's so sad and just silly. Like, wow. And you miss out on the opportunity to connect with people who do really good work. If we existed, if social media was a thing like how it is now, back in like the movements from the past, I think like the Black Panther movement, the Civil Rights movement, y'all would rip people to shreds. Like the very icons and leaders that we rely on. You saw that girl who got up on here and said, oh, like, don't praise Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman wasn't a real person. She was a spy for the U.S. government. Like, so basically, fuck Harriet Tubman. Like, y'all are nuts. And y'all don't even recognize that y'all, like, kind of do the same thing, rinse and repeat. And, yeah, I don't think a lot of people on here are perfect, myself included. But y'all are, like, really wild for that.
Y'all gotta be secret agents, bro. Shawty said Harriet Tubman didn't exist.
Ever since I found out Harriet Tubman is not a real person.
Then y'all gotta agree with her and start saying, yeah, cause how were slaves going through tunnels? How did they dig them?
Hear me out. That shit does not make any sense. Why would you be taking slaves underground in tunnels?
Yo, we being serious right now, bro? Y'all believe that the Underground Railroad was actual tunnels? The first shawty then goes to say, oh, the woman we call Harriet Tubman was actually an agent for the United States, and that wasn't her real name. It was all a lie, bruh. Harriet Tubman got rid of her slave name. I thought this was common knowledge. Google is free. And yes, Harriet Tubman was working with the North to get slaves out of the South. Can't blame the CIA for this one, bro. This is like the Emmett Till thing all over again, bro. You see how easy all the stuff I put up was Googled? Like, come on, bro. Harriet Tubman wasn't real.
At this point, I'm convinced that some of y'all work for the CIA. Harriet Tubman was a real person. She was a real person. We're not arguing about this. A lot of you, hopefully, might be scratching your heads and asking, what is this man talking about? There's a woman on this app that misleadingly opened up a video saying that Harriet Tubman was not a real person. The reason I say misleadingly is because it's not like she found out information that proved that Harriet Tubman was this metaphorical figure. It's because she just figured out that that was not her real name. That's right, that's the big reveal. Harriet Tubman's real name was not Harriet Tubman, it was Araminta Ross. Which, by the way, it's not like she fabricated that name out of thin air either. Harriet was her mother's name, and I think her middle name, and Tubman was her husband's last name. So it's her name. But that's not even the lie that pisses me off the most. The same person that said that she wasn't real, only to later say that she was real, also implied that she was a government spy. And while that technically is true, there's context behind that. Because if you just say that she's a spy, you're implying that she was capturing freed slaves and sending them back to their owners, when in reality she was a spy for the Union that helped free many slaves. And this is the problem with people who just say anything without doing research, because after her came another woman saying, you know what, it makes sense that she wasn't real, because what do you mean that we had an Underground Railroad? Where's the Underground Railroad now? Why can't we go see it today? The Underground Railroad was a network of safe houses where they would give asylum to freed slaves. Listen, I understand that elementary school was decades ago for some of you, but this should not be a necessary refresher course. I need you to understand that we're living in a day and age where we already deal with news outlets that lie to us, AI that's deceptive, and people that just start misinformation campaigns. Please, ask questions, absolutely, but don't participate in these games.
Everybody has said their piece about that lady that looked at the statistic that black women were the most educated people in the country and said, watch this, and proceeded to announce to the world that she didn't believe Harriet Tubman existed. But I have not said my 2 cents, and I don't want to pile on the lady, but I do want to bring to the attention of the masses that she has met thousands of people in her life. She has had dozens of adult teachers and mentors, and every single one of them failed her. Like, the amount of shame I would feel if I knew her even tangentially would drive me to become a hermit. Like, she has lived through so many Februaries, and not one single person was like, hey, let's have a detailed discussion about one of these folks. Like, I think we should also be concerned because she is not in the alt-right pipeline. She is in the alt-right pneumatic chute. Like, she's about to break the sound barrier, smash straight through QAnon, and create a whole nother level of conspiracy theories. And then, based on the fact that that video had likes, like more than one on it, she's not going to be alone over there. That is scary.
There are questions about whether or not Harriet Tubman is a real person. The extraordinary, the phenomenal, the sensational, the amazing Harriet Tubman. So I'm just hoping that we all can share our favorite thought, favorite fact that we know about Harriet Tubman. Get down to your local library, open up the multitude of books on the remarkable, extraordinary life of Harriet Tubman and share a fact with us. Share something great, share something wonderful about all the things that Harriet Tubman accomplished in her extraordinary life. She is the civil rights movement. She is an iconic civil rights figure. One of my most extraordinary things I've ever heard about her life is that she herself, as a conductor on the Underground Railroad, helped free so many enslaved people, they called her Moses. That is Harriet Tubman, legacy hero.
What do you mean Harriet Tubman isn't real? Like, I can understand the thought process behind being surprised or confused because you didn't know that her, like, real name wasn't Harriet Tubman, right? Like, I can wrap my head around that part. But at the same time, like, you know this woman was basically a fugitive. Like, that she ran away, like she was an escaped slave, okay? And so, like any fugitive, you wouldn't run around going by your real name. So I think it's like her mother's first name and her father's last name, right? But how you go from her real given birth name isn't Harriet Tubman to she just wasn't real, that we like made her up, is actually insane. Like, Harriet Tubman is not a Paul Bunyan, Johnny Appleseed situation where these are like stories and folklores that people like derive that are like loosely based on real people. Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth are real people. They're real people. Like, I'm putting y'all thinking Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth aren't real up there with people over the age of like maybe 12 or 13 who legitimately think that the Underground Railroad wasn't real or like think that the Underground Railroad was actually an Underground Railroad. Like, y'all think that in like the 1800s there was just some sort of secret like fucking MTA subway that somehow like was untraceable. Like, open the schools. Oh, but like, I don't understand. Like, how could I can't wrap my head around anybody being that dumb. I just don't understand.
Hey, y'all, hey. There was an active attack happening to Black history right now, where Black people and their achievements and accomplishments are being actively removed from government websites. Books are being removed from school libraries. Black accomplishments and people like the Tuskegee Airmen, like Harriet Tubman. And then when they get called on it, they're like, oops, my bad. But then they're going and quietly trying to remove it. They are trying to erase us, our history, the accomplishments and achievements of our ancestors. And they're not going to start, or they're not going to stop, rather, with Harriet Tubman. The next thing you know, they're going to be telling us that Rosewood never happened and Oscarville never happened. Lake Lanier was always there. We can't be active participants in that. And I think because social media gives us all a microphone and a platform, and we want to sound smart, we want to sound intellectual, but we don't do any deep research past ChatGPT or whatever the first thing that pops up in Google shows us. And then we get on here and we regurgitate that information trying to sound intellectual. We're doing ourselves a disservice. And then people are reposting and sharing and saying, oh, I knew it. I knew this never happened. The Underground Railroad could not have been a thing. There were not tunnels from the south to the north. It makes me sad. Sad for us that we can be so naive and so gullible that we actively participate in our own erasure. Stop it. If you don't know something, if you don't want to do the research, ask an historian.
Harriet Tubman was absolutely 100% a real person, okay? And just because that was not her actual name, her name was Araminta Ross, okay? She was born Araminta Ross. That's the name she was given at birth, but she changed her name so she could keep her freedom. Why are we not understanding? Like, what doesn't compute about the fact that she took her freedom? Was not given her freedom. She took her freedom, so she had to take a new name because they knew her as Minty, Araminta Ross. They knew who to look for. So if she had papers, anything that had this name, who y'all think gonna find her? Who y'all think gonna find her? Paper trail, right? So she had to change her name, okay? So spreading the narrative that, oh, ever since I found out she wasn't real, or she's not a real person, is so dangerous because she absolutely 100% was a real person. She simply changed her name so she could keep her freedom because they were always searching for formerly enslaved people by name. Like, what's not computing? Of course, if you had escaped enslavement and your enslaver knew you by this name, called you Minty, but knew what your name was, knew who your mama was, right? Knew where you came from, you would have to come up with a new identity. It's like witness protection, right? Yeah, you're gonna have to say you're somebody else. Find a new name in your freedom so you can maintain and keep your freedom. Because if y'all think they were not looking for her, y'all are crazy. And somebody would have been itching to turn her back in so she could be re-enslaved. Like, this happened constantly. So of course she had to change her name. I will not allow y'all to sit here and talk about Harriet Tubman was not a real person. What are we doing? This is misinformation. And it is a dangerous rhetoric to be throwing out on the internet in the in first sentences. Ever since I found out Harriet Tubman was a real person. Whoa, because she was. 100% was. She lived under that name, under that identity, as many other people do today. People change their names all the time. They still exist. They just don't use their dead name anymore. Like, we know this is a thing. This happens all the time. So please, let's not try to erase real Black people in real American history. She was born Araminta Ross, known by her enslaver as Minty. So when she took her freedom, she had to change her name to keep it. Okay.
We're questioning the existence of Harriet Tubman now. Bob the drag queen has to explain to y'all that Harriet Tubman did in fact exist? Are y'all dead ass? As ironic as it is, it came from the mouth of a black woman. Please, y'all love to play identity politics to y'all detriment. This right here proves that we are way more lost as a collective. Too lost to even really be holding these conversations. Education needs to happen first, literally. Bring school back into the schoolhouses, because meanwhile, at the same time, y'all are literally holding spaces and lives to bash other black people. And we can't even agree that Harriet Tubman existed. Shut it down.
Wow, what a sad discussion. But it's already going on and we have to accept how some people have taken it to be. But then, is that the truth? In 2025, a small but vocal subset of white individuals, particularly within certain online communities, have expressed skepticism about the historical existence of Harriet Tubman, largely driven by a broader wave of historical revisionism and anti-intellectualism amplified on social media platforms like TikTok and X. This disbelief stems from a combination of misinformation and distrust in established historical narratives, often fueled by conspiracy theories that question the authenticity of well-documented figures. For instance, some TikTokers, as noted in a 2025 article by Roots, have claimed Tubman was a fictional character or a government spy named Araminta Ross, asserting that her story lacks primary sources or was fabricated as an abolitionist propaganda. These claims ignore extensive historical evidence, including letters from abolitionists like Francis Douglas, newspaper archives, and Tubman's own pension records from the Civil War service, which informs her existence and contributions. This skepticism is often rooted in a broader rejection of narratives that highlight black heroism, reflecting discomfort with acknowledging the brutal realities of slavery and the urgency of enslaved individuals in resisting it. The propagation of these ideas is further enabled by a selective reading of history and the exploitation of gaps in public education about slavery and African American contributions. Some skeptics point to myths of exaggerations in Tubman's story, such as the debunked claim that she freed thousands of enslaved people. The accurate number is about 70, to argue that her entire existence is a fabrication. This misinterpretation is compounded by the fact that Tubman, being illiterate, left no personal writings, which some use to cast doubt on her story, ignoring that oral histories and corroborating accounts from contemporaries like Sarah Brentford's 1865 biography provides robust evidence. Additionally, posts in X from 2024 to 2025 reveal a narrative among certain groups that Tubman's feat were impossible, or an amalgamation of multiple people's actions, a theory that dismisses primary sources like court records, military documents, and photographs from the late 1860s. This selective skepticism often aligns with broader efforts to downplay the significance of black historical figures, reflecting a resistance to narratives that challenge white supremacists' framework of highlighting systemic injustices. The motivations behind these disbeliefs are a complex, often intertwining racial biases with a broader distrust of institutional knowledge. Some few white individuals, particularly those influenced by far-right or contrarian online spaces, may reject Tubman's story as a part of a larger push against woke historical narrative or diversity initiatives, as seen in reactions to her proposed inclusion in the $20 bill. This pushback, noted in 2021 Leeds Bucket University article, sometimes focuses on superficial aspects like Tubman's appearances rather than her actions, revealing underlying racial and gender stereotypes. Moreover, this rise of anti-DEI sentiments, as mentioned in the Root, amplifies efforts to erase or reframe black history, with Tubman's story becoming a target due to her iconic status. While these views remain fringe, their spread in 2025 highlight the dangers of unchecked misinformation and the need for robust historical education to counter narratives that seek to diminish the legacy of figures like Tubman, whose life is well documented through primary sources including abolitionists' corresponding military records and our own recounted experiences. Yes, so that is the entire story of what is going on. I think we can try to really have some facts before we come up with baseless accusations or even conspiracy theories that want to really diminish the contribution of black people towards the entire existence in America. Tell me down in the comment section what you think about this. And if you're watching us for the first time, please consider subscribing to the channel, like the video, and share. Thank you, and let's meet in the next one.